In this video we're going to look at some Python code that carries out some input, processing and then output. So input is getting the user information from the keyboard or mouse. Processing, the code will process that information that it gets from the input from the user. Then the program will output based on the processing of that information from the input. So let's run the code and see what this code actually does. So firstly, it's telling me to enter my name. Then it's telling me to enter the first number, so I'll just enter 1, then enter. And then another number, so I'll enter 2, then enter. Then the code does some execution and outputs some information. So 1 is less than 2, and the average of two numbers is 1.5. So let's relate this code here to what we have written here in the actual code. So input is an internal function to Python. It stops the execution of the program and waits for the user to input information via the keyboard. So please enter your name, colon and a space is this part here. Notice we've allowed a space there because when we type into the keyboard we want a bit of a space there. So at this line here the code, the program will actually stop and wait for the user to do something. So I typed in my name there and hit the enter button. Then once I've hit the enter button here, the program will go to the next line. So it's printed out. So print is internal to Python again with the brackets there, hello, and it's printed hello with a space. You can see here. The plus operator, when used with a string, it concatenates or adds on that those characters. So we can see here name is coming from this location here, location there. So whatever I typed in here will get stored in a variable called name, and this will get carried into this location here. So I typed in 1. I typed in John. So it got printed out here, John, which correlates to this location here. Then I'm concatenating using that operator, the plus sign, some characters here. So the first character is the exclamation mark, which is that little one there. But then I'm also adding this little character here. So this is the new, what's called the new line character, the / followed by a N. Basically will give us this space here. So that's what's giving the space there. Then the program will come to this line here and stop and wait for the user, myself, to enter something via the keyboard. So this is this line here. So you can see it waited for me to enter something in. I entered 1, the number 1, and then pressed enter. So it went on to this line here. It stored that first, it passed that number stored in the first variable to this location here. And we have this one here, int, which stands for integer. So this is another internal Python function. It converts whatever is here into a integer data type. So that number 1 will get converted into a integer data type and then get stored in the same variable first. So we can name these variables how we like. In this case it's called first. So then the program will get to this line here. It will stop once again for the input of the user at the keyboard. So this is this line here. Please enter the second number. I've entered in the number 2. So 2 gets stored here and then it gets assigned to the variable called second. Then the second, the variable here, second, gets passed into the int function here, this location, converted to a integer data type, then that gets assigned that value to the same variable second. Then we get to this part here, this block of code here. So this is called a if-else block statement. So if, else if, and else block. So it takes the variables first and second here and checks whether first is less than second. So that number here is less than second. If that is true, it will execute that print statement. If that is, this part here is false, it'll go to the next line here, the else if. So if the second number is less than the first number, it will execute this line here. But if neither of this is true, if that is false and this is false, it'll execute the else statement. So within the else are these two lines. And notice also the indentation. We need that indentation here after these if, else if, and else statements there. We also need the colon there as well. So if this is false and this is false, these two lines here will get executed. So that's how this little processing block works here. After that is finished execution, it'll come down to this line here. So you can see once again first and second are added now. Now this plus sign is doing something different than this sign, even though it is the same sign. So when used with a string type of data, it simply just glues on that string to the other string, so adds it to or concatenates it to that to the string. But when used with a number data type, say integer, it does mathematical addition to those two numbers. So it adds the number stored in first to the number stored in second, adds those two numbers together, and then divides it by 2. That's the divide operator. So in this case I entered in 1 and 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So 1.5 is stored in the variable called average. So this is a user defined variable. It's a name I made up. Then it gets to the next line. These comments are not executed by the Python interpreter, so they're ignored. They're just comments. So this line here is the final output of the program. Prints out a string with a space, concatenates. So this is a string, this is a string. So it's concatenating or gluing on the two strings together. And this is str, stands for string. So it's converting the number that we used here, average, or stored in the variable average, to a string. So not a number data type, it's actually a character or a string data type. So we can't do mathematics with this part here. And that's this final line here. So the average of two numbers is 1.5, and the 1.5 is coming from this part here. This line here, 1 is less than 2, is coming from this line here because the first number was less than the second. 1 is less than 2, so it executed this part and ignored the rest of it. So we can see how that decision block works there. Let's try and get this part here executed. So we have to make this false and we have to make this false. The only way we can make those two items false is by making first equal to second. So we'll just get rid of that, execute it again. Let's make first equal to 1, enter, then make second equal to 1 again, then enter. We can see we got our 1 is equal to 1, so 1 is equal to 1. It executed this line here because this was false, and the else gets executed. It also executed the second line within the else statement, so did you do that on purpose, which is this line here. Then it computed this here, so it added up 1 plus 1 divided by 2 is, so 1 plus 1 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. So 1, the number 1 got stored in the variable called average. Then it executed this line here, so that's this line here, 1. Okay, that completes the lesson, this Python lesson on the input, processing and output.